All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Innovate BC. And it is December 1st. It is the new month. It is the last month of 2021. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for a fresh year, a fresh start. So I'm really excited that we have a new month here, a new season that we're approaching. So we're glad that you are joining us this afternoon or wherever you are. Some of you might be watching this on the replay. So wherever you are, whatever part of the day this lands in for you, we just say welcome, welcome. We hope you're having a good day. I hope there's been some goodness and some beauty that you were able to see in your day. I always thank Creator, and I think of Creator for the gifts that have been given to us, that we can walk in a good way because we have land, we have waters, we have good relations, we have the sun, the moon, the stars. So we just give thanks for all of the gifts that the Creator has given to us. And we give thanks for this virtual community that we have here with Cando. So you've joined us for Innovate BC. I am super excited. A dear friend, Colleen, is here with us. So welcome, Colleen. I had the opportunity to listen to her several presentations before, and she's just a great speaker. She brings really good knowledge. So today's topic is making economic resiliency and recovery the new norm. So it's really important, really timely presentation to listen to. All over the world, communities and their economic development efforts are navigating uncharted waters. So this pandemic has opened many questions about post-COVID economy. Well, COVID-19 has been a devastating disaster affecting the world. There are other disasters that can happen at any time and hit at a local level, which we've been seeing in BC. It does not matter if it is a flood, a fire, the closure of your major employer, or something else that unexpectedly negatively impacts your economy. So these disasters seem to be happening more and more frequently, and your community needs to be more prepared to ensure that you have a resilient community if one does happen. So today we're going to explore what you need to be ready for in a situation of an economic disaster and to address current challenges impacting our economy. So like I said, this is a very timely webinar. So I hope you walk away with some really good knowledge. So Colleen, let me tell you a little bit about Colleen. She's with EDC Consulting. She is a certified economic developer with 24 years of economic development experience. She has extensive knowledge in building economic development programs for business retention and expansion, business attraction, and foreign investment attraction. She has worked from grassroots to government organizations and a variety of community development and capacity building roles, earning awards along the way. Shout out to you. So she co-founded EDC Consulting to provide consulting services to economic development agencies at all levels of government. So she's bringing with her a wealth of knowledge and awards. Awesome. So we welcome you so much to this platform, Colleen. Thank you for being here, and I'm passing this virtual mic to you.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I truly appreciate that. I will try to live up to it. I won't, but I'll do what I can. And you know what, you're so right. This is really, really timely. You know, talking about the recovery, the economic recovery of our communities throughout Canada, but particularly right now is a huge focus here in BC. I'm situated in the Okanagan, in the Syilx Okanagan Nation people's lands here, and throughout our land, you know, we've just seen disaster after disaster after disaster, it seems, here in BC. You know, we've had 4 this year alone. We had the continuing pandemic. We've had the wildfires. We've had the flooding, and then we also had the heat dome over the summer. So, you know, we're hitting them all in 2021. So I couldn't agree with you more about a fresh year in 2022 and moving things along. Now, I will also say the presentation was going to be between myself and Dale Wielden, who's with the BC EDA Association. Unfortunately, he was on a plane to fly in from Vancouver to Penticton, but we're experiencing very strong winds here in the Okanagan, so he wasn't able to land. So his plane's been turned back. So unfortunately, he can't connect with us today. So I'll try to make up for that and see what I can do. So let's get into it here. I'm going to turn off my video as well, and we'll concentrate on the slides here. All right, so just a little bit about the Economic Development Association, and it's really, you know, it's the leading association here in British Columbia. We have BCEDA has membership throughout our province from First Nations, Indigenous communities, local governments, regional governments, provincial representation as well. So it is able to cover sort of most every area within the province, and you know, it does a lot of things. Over the years, we have our annual summit. There's different webinars that we put on. Certainly our webinars have been a focus over the last year or so, year and a half, because of the pandemic. But, you know, really what BCEDA is really getting into much more over the last couple of years is that leadership role in economic recovery. And you know, part of me hates to say that because, you know, the reason that you become a leader in something is because it happens so often. And as I said, you know, we're really seeing that in BC for sure. Just this past year alone, that there's been so many disasters and things happening to our local economies that, you know, has really pushed the association to a different level than perhaps it would have if these things weren't happening. Just really quickly on myself, yes, I'm with economic development consulting firm, EDC Consulting, and we really focus on those smaller rural communities. We've worked across Western Canada, into the States and globally as well. And again, you know, some of those sample projects there that you see, you know, it's not in any particular order, but you see that economic recovery and resiliency. Honestly, I could probably, if it was in any particular order, I could move that to the top, just as BCEDA is really focusing on that because of happenstance. So are we. We're just seeing communities in these situations that require some assistance as they go for recovery. And, you know, today when I'm going to start talking about recovery, I'm really talking about economic recovery. After a disaster happens. That's the role that BCEDA plays. That's the role that I play as EDC Consulting as well. It's that economic piece that needs to be built back after any sort of disaster. And you know, what we find is communities are really, really good at getting people in and out of their community quite safely. You know, they're able to put those alert systems in place, you know, whether it's through an application that they've developed, or whether it's literally, you know, knocking on doors. But, you know, they really have that down very, very well to get get the residents and the citizens out of an area or out of a region or community. But what they usually lack is that piece to build back the economy. And that's what we're really going to be talking about today. And you know, when I talk community, you're going to hear me say community a lot today. And when I'm talking community, I'm meaning everybody, right? I'm meaning whether it's a town, a city, a First Nations community, a regional area government, whatever it is. That's what I mean when I say community. It's inclusive of everybody. So what happens with BCEDA specifically is we put together recovery teams, and we go into communities after a disaster has happened and help them build back their economic base by meeting with local businesses, by meeting with key stakeholders, and we bring in a team. It's not just Dale who goes in as the head of BCEDA or myself who may offer assistance, but we really bring with us a team of volunteers that are experts in economic development. They're experts in economic recovery. They may be experts in specific sectors as well. So, when we went into Grand Forks, which is a smaller community that had flooding a few years ago, this is a team that we brought in there. And, one of the team members was really focused on agriculture, and another team member was really focused on tourism, because those were those drivers in the community there. So here's some examples of different projects that we've worked on. So, we've been talking about economic recovery now for almost 10 years. The first project that we took this on was in Burns Lake, which is a community in northern BC, and they had a mill explosion. Unfortunately, there was a life lost on that one, but it was also their major employer. So with this mill explosion, the dependency of work was gone for that community. So we went in there to see, what else could we do? What strategies could we help them develop to get their labor force back to work, to diversify their economy, that sort of thing. From there, we went into southern Alberta, which had really bad flooding in the south there. I think that was in 2013. And then just down through here, you can see the wildfires that have hit our province in 17, 18, 21. We had 2 years that were just like, oh, isn't this beautiful? 19 and 20. And it's not, it's not a coincidence that we were all in lockdown, that we didn't have any wildfires, because we also know our wildfires a lot of time are human caused. But anyway, so we had them back again in 2021, unfortunately. We've gone, as I said earlier, we've gone across the globe to do work with communities after they've experienced hurricanes, typhoons, that sort of thing. We do work with our provincial government. We've worked in Washington State with their framework down there. And of course, COVID, that we had to scramble, like every other community has had to scramble to see how we can recover as fast as we can with COVID. And then now the flooding that just happened 2 weeks ago here in the Fraser Valley in BC. So let's just talk really quickly about what is a disaster. And I think, here's a great picture. I don't want to say great picture. I mean a great visual. You know what I mean? This is the Fraser Valley, 3 weeks ago. So there's the area there. You can see a lot of farmland, obviously. And then 2 weeks ago, that's the picture there. So you can see the amount of flooding that took over that area. And some areas got it worse than this. But, the visuals that are coming out of the Fraser Valley in Merritt, which is located in the Thompson Okanagan here in BC, have been incredible to actually see. So when we talk about natural disasters, I think for the most part, we all automatically think of these ones that are happening now. So the wildfires, the floods, the ice storms, those hurricanes or tornadoes, those sort of things. Those are what instantly come to mind when we think about disasters. But there's a whole pile of other ones, unfortunately, that we have to think about. Hazardous materials, when they spill, cyber attacks, they're unfortunately on the rise for sure, and that's globally as well. Explosions, plant closures are major employers. So I just talked about the Burns Lake, but we've worked with other communities who have or are dependent on one employer in town, and when that employer leaves, what happens to that community? Right, that's a disaster, right? Terrorism is of course another one that we see more and more. So these are ones that you just don't even think about. The picture on the left-hand side is a few years ago. Happened in Toronto in a busy downtown shopping area, and a van just drove in to the area. Again, unfortunately, lives were lost there. But that's a disaster for that area, right? That does affect your economy. That does affect businesses. Not to mention the lives lost. I mean, I don't want to downplay that at all. But we're focused on the economic recovery here, and we have to think of these things when they're not thinkable in some ways. I mean, here's just a really quick one here, bulk barn that happened about a year ago, just down the road from me. And that is not my car. I promise you that. Not I haven't actually put my car into reverse when it's actually been in drive and I didn't know it. But anyways, not this time. But that's exactly what happened, right? This vehicle, the white SUV, was putting their car in reverse and it was in drive. Boom, right through that plate window. That shut down that business for a couple of days. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but labor hours were lost. Those employees got laid off for a couple of days. They had to build it back and all that. So there was an impact there too, right? So not a major disaster, but it's a little bit of a disaster that we just don't think about, much less, the unexpected. So that's kind of unthinkable, but the pandemic was really unexpected. So, I'm going to talk to you in a bit about the plan that we would really want you to put together. It's an economic recovery plan. And we want this plan to be done prior to any disaster happening. But I'm going to tell you, if you had written an economic recovery plan in 2018, and one of the things you're going to do in that plan is identify your risks in your community. So, maybe you're at risk of a wildfire or a tornado, whatever it is. I can guarantee you there's probably not one plan that would have been written that said something about a pandemic, a global pandemic. So there is always going to be the unexpected. Now, that's not to say, well, then I'm just not going to write a plan because I really can't plan for everything. That's true. But if you did write that plan in 2018, I can guarantee you as well that there would have been strategies that you would have identified that you could have put into play as soon as that pandemic had happened. Versus being reactive, you would have been proactive. So we're going to talk about what plan that the details of that plan and first of all let's see whether your community is ready for what happens when a disaster does come to you. So here's a picture that was just taken about a week or so ago. This is Hell's Gate. It's located just outside of Hope in BC, which is in the Fraser Valley here. And this is a tourist attraction that's been around for years and years and years and years and years. And it's a tram that goes up, and it's spectacular views, absolutely fantastic. So you can see the destruction that has happened to that business there. This business is not going to be up and running anytime soon. This is going to take a long, long time to rebuild this business. And what we know is that there are businesses that are not going to survive a disaster. Statistics show that 1 in 4 businesses will not survive a disaster. They don't have the capital to carry through the time frame, perhaps, of that disaster. There's some businesses that probably shouldn't be in businesses anyways that are going to fall. There's not those resources, maybe at the provincial or the federal level, that can help support those businesses. So there's lots of reasons why a business won't survive. But 1 in 4 is a pretty big number. At the height of COVID, there were communities that were saying 75%. They were going the opposite, that 75% of their businesses wouldn't survive COVID. Now that's nuts, right? Could you imagine walking down your main street and 75% of your businesses are gone? So we need to identify as many strategies as we can pre-disaster to make sure we can save as many businesses post-disaster. So let's talk about getting your community ready for disaster. So again, this is a picture that was taken down in the Abbotsford area, I believe, just a week and a half ago. So you can see the flooding that's there. Most of that water has not receded as of yet. So there's 4 phases to a disaster. There's the mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. A lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be that preparedness. That's where we want you to be. The mitigation is things that communities do, and some communities do them really well. Here again, this picture was just a couple of days ago. This was in Abbotsford as well, in the Fraser Valley. So they'd had all that flooding. You saw it on that picture just previous. They knew that more rain was coming in the next day. So they built these tiger dams that are across Highway 1. So we all know the importance of Highway 1 for Canada. That's a Trans-Canada highway. So it's so important for our supply chain, right? It's crucial to getting products into our communities. It's crucial to getting you and I into visiting other communities for tourism, right? It's crucial for getting our labor force into our communities and out of our communities, so business can be done, so our local economy can do what it needs to do to thrive. So there's a mitigation that they put into place, and thankfully, it actually worked. It was very successful. And Abbotsford over the last couple of days have not had anything dramatic happen since since water rose up to 8 feet in some areas. And then there's that preparedness. As I said, that's what I really want to talk to you about today. So that's writing down your plan, right? That's getting your community ready to go when a disaster happens. And then once you're prepared and a disaster does happen, you're in that response mode. You're ready to start working with making sure your community is safe, right? You're ready to start working with your local businesses to get them doing what they do best. And then you work, once you sort of get into that response mode, it's sort of an even flow into recovery, right? You start kind of getting into recovery sometimes before you even realize you're out of the response. So there's really an ebb and flow between response and recovery. And COVID, I think, was a really, really good example of that, because, when COVID first hit, boom, we were in response immediately. And we were in response for a good couple of months. We thought we were getting into recovery, but then another wave hit, back to response, right? And we've seen that time and time again with COVID. And unfortunately, I hope things don't work out as bad as they have been for COVID in the last 18 months with the new variant that's been found. But we might be right back to more response than recovery with the pandemic again. So this is the role of the EDO, the Economic Development Officer, or the Economic Development Practitioner. And this really is you, right? So at any time, the role of economic development is huge. You're all of these things, right? You're the analyst, the catalyst, the gap filler, the advocate, the educator, the visionary, the communicator. You're all of these things every single day, right? And you guys do it really, really, really well. And I was an economic development officer for 13 years here in the central Okanagan. And so I really understand the push and pull of all the directions that an EDO is put into. But, when it comes to a disaster, that communication piece really falls on your shoulders. And that's for the economic recovery piece, right? That's where you really will play a key role. And we'll talk a little bit about communication just in a little bit here. So here's preparedness. This is that, the 4 phases. So here's your second phase of preparedness and where you really play a role. And it's about really having a good understanding of how your community may be impacted. So some of those things are going to be pretty easy, right? So, for the caribou here in the BC, and I'm going to talk about BC a lot, obviously, because this is where I live, but here in the caribou and here in the Thompson Okanagan, we know that one of our risks is fire. And we are really, really clear on that, right? But understand, what are your risks? And what are those risks, and how can you be impacted as a community? What areas within your community can be impacted more or less, right? And maybe it's the whole community, maybe it's just one corner of one neighborhood, whatever it is. But you really have to have that understanding of what your community is their risks and what that impact is. And then being, again, understanding of how you can respond and recover as a community, whether it's through training and education. What are those resources that you need to pull together for your response and your recovery efforts? And preparing should include these 3 things. You should really be engaging with your business community. So, we do a lot of other webinars to talk about economic development sort of in general and what successful economic development communities do. And one of the key things that successful economic development communities do is they engage with their business community. And that's called business retention and expansion. And I'm sure you've all heard of it. And it is a key component. It should be your #1 activity in economic development. And I can tell you, those communities that did not really engage with their business community post-COVID, they struggled more than those communities that did have an active business retention and expansion program. They really had a bit more of an uphill climb to recovery than those already involved. So I cannot talk more than anything else other than breathe. Like, I could spend a whole day or a week telling you why you should be engaging your business community. But you also need to do pre-disaster strategic planning. And I'm going to tell you what that means. I've got a slide here to tell you what we think your plan should look like. What are those components of your strategic plan, and what should that be? Who should you include? And I'm going to try to spend quite a bit of time on that, so that you leave with something really valuable to take away into your own community. And whatever other readiness activities that maybe are more unique to your community as well, that planning should be, and who those would involve as well. There needs to be plans for a business recovery center. And a business recovery center is an area, it's an actual physical location, typically, a physical location where businesses can come after a disaster to get assistance on how they can recover faster, how they can get back to doing business. And it's, as I said, typically it is a physical location, but what we saw with COVID, because you weren't able to meet face-to-face, a lot of communities put these sort of centers, if you will, in quotation marks, online, and they had virtual centers for businesses to either find information online or to have a one-on-one Zoom discussion or what have you. So really important to have that assistance for your businesses. And you really need to understand what programs are available, what resources are available at your provincial level and your federal level. And sadly, I will say, you probably may be a little disappointed in the amount of programming that's available and the amount of financial resources that are available. It's not, I don't think it's as available and as well financed as some people may think. So, once you've had the disaster, you've put your recovery plan into place, you've put your response plan into place. Here's your recovery. This is that 4th plan. And it's really important to think that, this phase isn't just a quick one and done. It can take quite a while. So, typically it's sort of short term, getting things all ready and recovery, well underway is probably 6 months to a year or so. But long term can last for decades. And I think, again, COVID has certainly shown us this. We were in lockdown starting March, I believe, of 2019. And we thought probably a couple of months by summer would be good to go, right? Short term, maybe 6 months, done. Well, here we are 18 plus months later, and we're still into it. And long term, as I said, decades. You think of New Orleans, Katrina, it was 10 years before they even thought they were in the recovery phase. So a long, long time that it can take. And it's really important that at the local level, that investment in the capacity for what you do as economic development is really supported. It's so important, that role that you're going to play in the economic recovery, and we really need to see the communities being fully behind that. So pre-disaster planning, as I said, is a must. And I said we've been talking about this for 10 years, and I'm happy to talk about it. But I would be happier still if communities actually put together a plan. And I'm disappointed that very few communities have put together economic recovery plans. I think COVID has changed that. I think there's more communities that are interested to put pen to paper and really get things done. And I think we'll really see it here in BC more. now with what's happened down in the Fraser Valley. But, I hate that it's a disaster that motivates communities to do what they should do to help themselves. But anyways, that's that's what it is. So yeah, you know what? The post-disaster, those small businesses, those are your employers, those are your local economy. Without them, you don't have an economy, right? So it is really important to get this pre-disaster planning done. And as I said, that assumption that there's external resources at the provincial or federal level is just not there. It's an assumption. It's not supported at all. It's very, very challenging to find the programs in place where businesses are supported at a level that they need to be supported at. That timely access to capital, of course, extremely important. I think there's probably, every community will have a story at least of one business that had some real challenges during COVID with their access to capital. And there's multiple benefits. This isn't just a one-time thing of economic recovery bringing benefits for that recovery piece. There's so many benefits that just go throughout your community when you start doing this pre-planning efforts. It's who your stakeholders are. It's who your businesses are. It's who you make your networks with and your connections and your partnerships with. You will really have different benefits versus just a recovery plan. So here is the plan content that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on talking about. And so these are the 10 that we think should be in your plan. These are what we think you should sit down with a group of stakeholders and businesses and really develop a plan, really identify those initiatives and strategies that will help in your economic recovery. So the first thing you're going to do, I talked about it just a few slides ago, is that risk. What is your community risk? What is it that can be a disaster for your community? Not necessarily that it will be, but it might be, right? So it's a risk. So really be clear of who that is. And, when you're sitting down to start to do this plan, you're not going to do this plan alone. This is where you're bringing in your partners, as I said, your stakeholders, all of these people. So, for your community risk, you would really want some of your first responders to the table, right? They know what they're fighting, right? For if it's wildfires, right? You want them at your table to really identify what that risk is in your community. And then you want to know where the area geographically it is. So not just the risk, but geographically, what is it? And what is that impact fully, as much as you can imagine, because we've already talked about the unimaginable, right? And put that in. The next one is a community engagement with your businesses, with your local businesses. This is your business retention and expansion. So what we want you to identify in the plan for this is how are you going to communicate with your local businesses once a disaster happens? And this is really, really crucial. This is a key part of your economic recovery. We've been in a lot of communities on recovery. We've seen it through the floods. We've seen it through COVID, where a call is made to BCDA as an association from a local community to say, do you have a list of our local businesses? Well, why would a provincial association have a list of community local businesses? Right? That's they're a membership-based community or organization. It's like asking the province for a list, right? It's not really that different. So at a local level, you need to know who your businesses are. You need to know how to contact them. You need to know how the best way to get a hold of your businesses. And so what I would stress when you're writing your plan is to say, I know my database. I have my database of businesses. I have key contact information for it, and I have alternate contact information. So you don't want to just know that it's, J. Smith, and here's the business number, and here's the business email. Because depending on the disaster, they're not going to be at their business address, right? So you need alternate information. You need a personal email if you can possibly get it, a personal cell phone, an alternate individual, maybe not just the owner. Maybe there's a second person that you can get a hold of. Very, very important. We've seen businesses lose so much of their inventory because a community wasn't able to get a hold of them to tell them anything, right? So that's just one little thing that you can do to talk about your businesses or to identify in your plan is just what is your database going to look like? I talked about that business center for economic recovery. So that, as I said, typically is a location in your community where businesses are going to go to for assistance and for help. And we want you to, in your plan, to identify where that location is going to be. But what we also want you to do in your plan is to identify a second and maybe even a third location. And I'll give you an example why. So in Grand Forks, that was flooded. They had their downtown area flooded. They had the majority of their businesses were flooded. I think it was 164 of their downtown businesses were flooded. If they had said, you know what, we are going to locate our business center for economic recovery downtown at the chamber office. Well, the flood happened, guess what? So is the chamber office flooded. So you can't meet there. So you have to have an alternate plan. So if you have these, you're not scurrying, right? You're not trying to make up time to find a third alternative to a location because you've already identified it in your plan pre-disaster. So you know where you're going. And because of COVID, I would suggest in your plan, not only have physical locations identified, but have a plan for putting something virtual on the on your webpage of where people can find information. I think that was a really valuable resource for many communities here. There's the business reentry system. So as I said, communities are really, really good about getting businesses of getting their residents in and out of their community during a disaster, right? They've got the alert systems in place, everybody's out. But then what happens is they let everybody in, everybody, all at once for the most part, right? They never really think about the businesses. So what we know, when people come back into a community after a disaster, what they really want is normalcy, and they want it as fast as they can. So they want to go and get their groceries at the local store. They want to go for a cup of coffee in the morning where they always would go post or pre-disaster, and they want to sit down with their neighbors, right? So if you let every single person in at the same time without having a re-entry system for your businesses are going to be scrambling to try to get that coffee shop open when all the residents are already in. That person who owns a grocery store is scrambling to get their supplies in because they were just allowed in as well. So there's re-entry systems that are really simple, and you can find them on the internet. And I'm going to give you a resource at the end of this. We've written a book that we've put through to a toolkit through BCEDA, and it talks about all of these things in much more detail, and it gives you templates for every single component of this plan. We cannot make it easier for you. So please, please, please go to that website that you'll get at the end of this and download that and use those templates to do all of these things that I'm talking about. Business financing. This is really finding out what is the need of your businesses and where is that financing available. So, all of these things that I've talked about, just, these first 5, and I said at the very beginning, it's not something you're going to do alone. So what I would really stress, the first thing before you even do that community risk assessment is you pull together a team. You pull together an economic recovery team of key stakeholders and businesses in your community that are going to sit around the table and develop this plan with you. So for business financing, you should have somebody in the financial sector in your community, your region, wherever you were located, to be sitting at that table to help you with that component of the plan, right? You should have somebody from the workforce agencies sitting at your table, at the education institutes sitting at your table. All of these people are going to have expertise that can help you with each and every one of these components of the plan. So your capacity building, that's going to be crucial to find out, what capacity do you currently have, right? To really look at that and be honest about what your economic development capacity is right now, and what are those risks and impacts that you're going to have to play a role on. And do you have that existing capacity? What is it you're going to have to bring in? What other partner may it be that you'll need to have play a role to help you to respond to the different needs that you're going to have to be responsible for? Workforce planning, that's really crucial. What we've found in many communities is, unfortunately, when a disaster happens and that recovery period is quite long, a lot of times the employees cannot wait for a business to get up and running again. They've got to leave the economy, or they've got to leave the community for someplace else to work. They've got to make a living. And unfortunately, a lot of times those individuals don't come back to a community. So you've lost a major part of your labor force, potentially, after a disaster. So again, having those agencies sitting around the table with you to develop different plans and initiatives and programs that could be initiated in your recovery phase is really, really important. The land and building reuse and redevelopment. So this has been a really big thing, and it's going to be huge in the flooding, those communities that have been flooded. Some of those existing businesses are going to be inhabitable, right? And I'm talking about the commercial space, much less the residences, unfortunately. But, so you have to have in your plan pre-disaster, how are you going to look at some of these things? How are you going to relocate businesses that may not be able to go back into their existing space? So these are things you can think about pre-disaster and put them into your plan so that you've got something to reference and go to immediately. The communication strategy is a big part of this plan for sure. There's no doubt about it. You as economic development are really going to be shouldering the communication piece for your local businesses. And it's so important that there's this one voice that does this, right? Rumors are going to start, misinformation is always going to get out, but if you can handle it as much as you can with one person giving one message clearly, that will go a long way in the community to sort of, as much as you possibly can, keep those rumors and misinformation down. So really important that that communication piece is identified about who that person is, how you're going to communicate, because again, looking at the risk, maybe the internet is down throughout the whole community. So how are you going to communicate then, right? So you got to think of different ways to communicate and what that means for you at the local level to get that message out consistently and with one voice. And again, that template or that toolkit I was talking about will have a toolkit that will go through all of the different pieces of putting together a communications plan. The federal and provincial programs for recovery. So knowing what those are already, pre-plan, pre-disaster, that's going to be really important. So you know them right off the bat, and this plan is going to be revisited. Like maybe you won't have a disaster for 5 years or ever. And you know what? I hope that's true. I truly hope a community will never have another disaster. Unfortunately, it's unlikely. I'm sure there's going to be another disaster in another community. So these plans need to be revisited to make sure the information there is up to date as possible, particularly when we're talking about different programs, et cetera, that come and go, that change and all of that sort of stuff. So, but identifying them in the plan will make it a little easier, right? You know, what some communities did, as I said, they put the plans and resources that are available, and they put them on a page off their website. And then they just were able to go in there very easily and update that page as quickly as the information changed or the program changed. So, you know, that's some strategy that you may want to build into your plan for sure. So those are the 10 components. And as I mentioned, please use that toolkit that I'm going to send you to at the end of the slides here with the link to the website. It'll really walk you right through it. So this is the business engagement piece again. As I said, I can talk about engaging with your businesses for days and days and days and days. But, you know, it's really, really important to talk about this and to get your businesses thinking about a disaster and to get your businesses thinking pre-disaster about a disaster and what they can do. And what we found is, particularly with COVID, that most businesses don't have a business plan and they don't have a continuity plan. So, and if they do, they probably haven't visited it for, you know, since it was done, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I know we talked to a business who was proudly saying that, yes, I do have a continuity plan. And then, you know, 2 seconds later was, yeah, but it's probably out of date. It was 20 years ago. So really talk to your businesses about doing this. Maybe in your economic disaster plan, one of your strategies or initiatives is to do a workshop for your local businesses on building a plan for themselves, right? That's a great strategy. That's something you can do pre-disaster. That's a mutual benefit for your local economy. And the need to educate is so strong and is ongoing. That's sort of that communication piece as well tied in, but to make sure that your businesses really know what's what and who's who, and you know what's going on at this particular moment in time. Really important to make sure that that's well articulated out into your business community. So here's some things that you can do up, right? There's lots of different things. BCEDA, these are just some examples that they did with COVID. Is you know the province came up, if you remember, with COVID and said, you know, before businesses can open, these are non-essential businesses can open, they have to have an operational plan. And that was about all they said. They didn't bother with a template. They didn't bother with telling a business how to do it. And we know businesses are busy trying to do business. They're not busy trying to do a plan, right? So BCDA did up a template to get businesses, and that was turned around in probably half a day after the announcement. The announcement was made at, say, 9 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, here's a plan that we sent out to businesses into communities to say, here's your operational plan, just fill in the blanks. There's 10 steps to prepare for your business for evacuation. That's something that you can download from the BCDA website and put into your pre-disaster plan that you want to put out and put that on your website. So all of these things can be developed pre-disaster that will help once the disaster hits. Again, I'm not just going to go on and on here about disaster and recovery but it's BRE on steroids. So if you are not engaging, if you want to take away one thing from here, besides making sure you write your plan, it's this: engage with your businesses now, not after a disaster. Because trying to play catch up with your business when the disaster is happening or you're in recovery mode and response mode is really, really challenging. So please, please, please make sure that you are engaging with your businesses. So there you go. At minimum, do the BRE. Make sure that you stress to your businesses the continuity plans. As I said, put in a strategy, put in an initiative in your plan that you're going to do this. And maybe your plan also has a strategy that you're going to start meeting with, 5 businesses a month. I don't care what the number is. It could be 1 business a month for all. I don't know what the number of businesses are in your community, but 1 business is enough for me. Just meet with your businesses, right? So maybe that's something that you want to identify in that plan. Here's another thing I think you want to identify in that plan is to collect that comprehensive information, that contact information on your businesses. I think that would be a great initiative that you put into your plan that you can work on pre-disaster and have all of that information ready to go and make sure you keep it updated throughout the next year and year, all of those sort of things. Really, really important. What are those social media and other communication networks that you can identify? Put that in your plan as well. Determine what that business reentry program is going to look like. So again, that should be a good strategy or initiative in that plan. How is that going to work? That toolkit we have will give you an examples of that, or you can go onto the internet and just search disaster recovery business reentry program. You'll find a list of communities and how they do it. And then establish, this is a good one too, establish a pre-qualified list for service providers. So what we unfortunately have seen when we've gone into communities after a disaster is people need to rebuild back, right? Whether it's a residence or whether it's a building, or they need to have, you know, the water taken out of their basement, that sort of thing. And a lot of times they're at the local level, depending on the size of the community, there may not be the businesses and the service providers that can do that. So people from the outside come in. And a lot of times these are good, reliable service providers. But unfortunately, there's also the scammers that come in, and the ones that will overcharge, will not complete the work, or will complete the work, and it's really, really bad. But if you can identify a service provider list that you know is qualified, is going to do work really well, and is not going to overcharge, and you put that list together for your businesses, for your residents as well, and say, you can call these people. They can come into our community and they can do the work, and we trust them. And that's something you can put in as an initiative to build that list, and you can do that pre-disaster as well, instead of, again, trying to find them when everybody's trying to find them. So again, these are the provincial and federal resources. Please do not depend on these, but solely. Do not depend on them solely, is what I'm saying. But here was one from the Government of Canada for COVID-19, and this is just a quick page of BCEDA's website that they put together for resources for BC businesses. That was an ongoing live document that they continued to update, and they actually reactivated it 2 weeks ago. As soon as the floods hit in the Fraser Valley, the webpage was updated, so all of the new programs, existing resources, et cetera, are on that. And again, as I said, that's a live document, so it's updated 24/7. So just really quickly, I can give you some examples of different communities. This is a picture of Merritt from a week ago. So Merritt is located in the Thompson-Okanagan region, Thompson-Nicola region, I guess actually they are. And they had flooding, and they're just starting to let people in to their community now. But there's some community or some businesses and some residents that unfortunately their properties are just not going to be able to be lived in. But you know, I heard a really good story about what Merritt was doing. So with Merritt, the whole town, 5,000 plus, were evacuated out of Merritt, and a lot of them went into Kamloops, which is located about an hour up the road, up the highway from Merritt. And so they're in hotels and that sort of thing. And there's a hotel in downtown downtown Kamloops, where a lot of the residents of Merritt have had to go. And they have offered one of their facility rooms, their conference rooms, to be a schoolhouse for the younger kids in there. And they've got one of the parents being a volunteer to teach the kids. I think they run it from like 9 to 12. And then the hotel has also implemented bingo nights for the kids and the parents. They've also offered, I think, more of an adult sort of cocktail evening, if you will, to relax. But, you know, that's such a cool thing that a local business is doing to help out these displaced individuals from Merritt. And I think it was just a really heartwarming story to see that they're willing to take them in and really help them out. I talked a little bit about Southern Alberta floods and the work that we did there. There was 11 different communities that we went into, and after the flooding had happened, most of the water had receded by the time we had come in, and we were there to build sort of short-term economic development strategies for them. You know, what could they do over the next year to 2 years to help build back their communities? The BC wildfires, I guess I should add 2021 to this slide. Lots of work we've done with the BC wildfires here. But, you know, that was really, really where it came very prominently, that local business or local communities do not have a list of their local businesses. It was really became so clear in 2017 that was a huge challenge for communities to overcome, and they've been working on it ever since then. We were brought into the U.S. Virgin Islands. This is a picture of a hotel here after they were hit back-to-back almost with hurricanes in 2017, and that's a hotel and the damage to their foundation. So again, talking about long-term, that was over 2 years before they were able to get that foundation back up to where it was able to be structurally safe again. And then unfortunately COVID hit, so they weren't able to open for another year or so after that. Grand Forks, talked lots of things about Grand Forks. This is a business assessment that we did, and what we found for Grand Forks is you know, there wasn't really any money or any program to help existing businesses here in the province after disaster. That became very, very clear with Grand Forks. They have one program that's the disaster program, disaster relief program, disaster, whatever it's called. But it hadn't been updated, it hadn't even been looked at for 25 years. So these businesses that I mentioned, 164 businesses impacted by the floods in Grand Forks, there were less than 12 businesses that made it to the maybe they could get financial assistance. Not that they would, but maybe. So 12 out of 164 businesses, because this program was so outdated, it just might as well not have even been in existence. It just didn't help. So I really stress to work with your local governments, work with your provincial governments to find out what programs they are and are they applicable today. Because it was really sad. The other thing I would say about Grand Forks that we really learned a huge lesson, and we're learning it here, of course, with the flooding here in the Fraser Valley as well, is insurance. So, you know, if you're going to put a strategy or an initiative into your disaster recovery plan, I would say to reach out to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and they all have provincial representation as well, and have them come in to your community and talk to your local businesses about what's available, what it means to be insured, what it doesn't mean to be insured, because in Grand Forks, oh boy, you know, there were businesses literally side by side who had different brokers selling insurance, one saying, yep, I can sell you flood insurance. Business, I'm telling you, literally next door, the broker said, nope, I cannot sell you flood insurance. So one got it, one didn't. Neighbors, businesses, side by side. How do you think that went down? Not very cordially, I can guarantee you that. So reach out to the Retail Bureau, no, not the Retail Bureau, the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and get the provincial rep into your community to talk to your businesses. North Mariana Islands, we went in there after a typhoon. And I see I'm running out of time. Flin Flon, the only thing I'm going to mention about Flin Flon, Manitoba, Saskatchewan is what I really liked about them. We went up there about 2 years ago because they are a small community. Their whole region is about 5,000 people. They have a mill up there, or sorry, a mine up there that employed 900 people. It was their major employer, obviously, right? 900. They said that in 2022, they were closing the mine. And they were relocating to other mines a little farther south, but the majority of the workers were going to be laid off. Some were able to go to the other mines, but the majority were done. So huge, huge impact on that community. So what I liked is they brought us up to say, okay, we have a 3-year period to diversify our community, to diversify our economy. What can we do today so that in 3 years, when that mine leaves, we're not going, now what do we do, right? So I love this example that they were proactive and thought about it. Pandemic, we can talk about that for days on end as well. So, okay, so we also do a full workshop, or BCEDA does, but here's the website, BCEDA .ca. You pop on that, you just go to resources, and you will find all of those toolboxes and toolkits, et cetera, that I was talking about. And really, please, 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 go and download them. You won't be sorry. It's templates coming out of your ears, but we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you. Okay, time, right?
Colleen, wow, you've just given us so much good information. And I think those resources, so if you click on that website, the resources that are accessible, like use those tools. The one thing that you had said and expressed was, I wrote it down, engage with businesses now, make those plans now, have that conversation, that communication now, always have that plan. If there's anything that we learned, through COVID, and you've talked about disasters beyond COVID, but we've learned that it's important to have those plans. It's important to have the conversations and the dialogue around disaster and economic recovery. So thank you so much. Earlier on, there was questions in the chat box. And this one is from Patricia. Is there specific funding sources available for emergency management or planning?
What province is that from?
Patricia, are you Saskatchewan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I do not know that. But you know what? I would reach out to Dale's counterpart, Verona, at the Saskatchewan Economic Development Association there. She should be able to tell you that.
Okay, great. Another question is from Dora. I know here in BC, after the fires in 2017, there was a funding for recovery planning. So she worked at a First Nation community at the time, and she was hired. We hired one of our community members to work with a consultant. We formed an emergency management committee in the community, which is brilliant.
Great.
As some First Nation communities have these committees. So that's more of a comment more than anything. So kudos to you, Dora. That's brilliant, brilliant.
Yes. So Dora, so when I talked about not doing that plan alone, that's sort of the committee I want you to form, right? And if you have that committee pre-disaster, when that disaster comes, you can just call them, right? Boom, 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 boom. Disasters happen, let's go, we got to implement our plan. So I love that. And I hope that you had on the team, I hope you had some local businesses on the team. I don't know what your makeup was, but some communities we saw when they pulled these teams together after COVID, all they had was local government representation on it. And, no disrespect to local government at all. They definitely, obviously, have a role to play in our recovery of our economy. But we're talking about businesses and their recovery, right? So we need to know what they need, not what we think they need, not what we think a local councillor thinks they need, right? So having business representation on those committees is really crucial.
That's great. That's great. But we have time for one question or comment. Is there anyone out there who wants to lend their voice to this conversation? The floor could be yours.
I'll take advantage of that, Michelle. Thank you.
Right.
I apologize, I can't turn my video on. It's Patricia from Saskatchewan. So when we're working with First Nations, a lot of times when we're talking about recovery, not just from pandemics or other disasters, operations, including assets like IT, because what happened with a lot of nations is a lot of them needed to work from home. So to work from home, laptops became a concern. Students from accessing online courses. So they had set up some temporary measures in terms of IT. But I'm also finding that a lot of nations don't have occupational health and safety, or as you said, health, safety, and wellness policies in place. So I don't know if you've done any work in those particular areas, but I'm working right now with the nation specifically on those issues of operations, identifying some of these gaps. They're very fortunate that they have an emergency management planning team, but how everything from assets and inventory. And so any comments on IT, occupational health and safety, anything else that are nation specific?
Yeah. Well, with IT, and I don't know if you're talking specifically too about the digital divide, which was huge. It has been huge, but I don't think people realized how huge it was until COVID hit, and we had to start working from home. And those smaller communities, particularly northern communities, who just were not connected, just did not have that capacity to connect, and that equality just was really shown that it just wasn't there across Canada by any stretch of the imagination. And the other thing I do want to mention, you just talked really quickly. I know you're saying health, safety, and wellness. I want to talk about the wellness piece just really quickly, because I try to remember to say it, but I sometimes forget it, is that wellness piece, and I'm talking about mental health wellness, is huge in a post-disaster. We see it time and time again when we've gone into communities that these individuals, and again, we stress that we're talking about economic recovery. So we're talking to a business owner, but this business owner is also a resident of that community, right? Also has family that's been impacted in that community. Also has seen so many others of their neighbors being impacted. So they're sort of kind of getting it from all different sides. And the stories that you hear can be heart-wrenching. And when you go in to talk to your businesses or your residents or anything else, you need to make sure that you're ready to hear those stories, that you can have that empathy and that compassion to just hear the story. You can't fix it. And, they likely aren't looking for a fix. They just need to hear that ear. But as an individual who's either a volunteer going in on economic recovery, or perhaps you're one of those committee members who's working on that economic recovery, or you're the EDO who's working on that economic recovery, really take into mind that wellness piece that you also have to take care of yourself for, so that you can help them, those businesses, those individuals that you're talking to. And it's a piece that is huge and is rarely talked about.
Thanks for saying that, Colleen. I think that's huge. I agree with you. It's huge. Mental health, just so important to tend to and be mindful of. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That's all we got. And we went over a little bit, but it was so good to have Colleen here and share what she knows, because it was so important. We do send our prayers to BC and everything that's happening out there and across Turtle Island as well. But we hear those stories, and we saw those pictures from a week ago in Merritt. Like, that's devastating. So we do send our good energy and our prayers to BC and to the families, the communities. Colleen, it's always a pleasure to have you here. So thank you for lending your time and your voice to this conversation. And you all, thank you for being here. We hope you have a good rest of the day. It's a new month, December 1. I hope we see you again, and take care. Be well. Peace.
Yeah. Thank you.